Good afternoon, I'm Nicolette de Jonquer, Chief Editor for Allnews, French-speaking online platform dedicated to finance in Switzerland. And with me is William de Vijlder, Global Head of Economics at BNP Paribas.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, fine.
It's very nice to see you again, and we have been discussing monetary policies and central bank earlier. The big issue, the big topic is that memorandum that was issued on the 4th of October by a series of former central bankers expressing deep concerns about the ECB monetary policy, or rather the ECB policy in general. Mm-hmm. What is your view on their concerns and what they have expressed?
Well, first of all, it's an important document, if only because the people who have signed the document, so it means that we have to look at it very carefully and really try to come up with a kind of a balanced view if you would not agree with everything. And indeed, there are points in there that I would agree on. That is that we have reached a stage now where you have to wonder when will the negative consequences of negative rates, of quantitative easing, what it does to the pricing of financial assets, when will these negative consequences end up dominating the hoped for positive consequences? Now, stating that problem is very easy, saying when we reach the point is difficult, if not impossible. We have to wait for the data to show up. On the other hand, there are points in the memorandum where I frown a little bit. For instance, at some point there is the argument that there has never been any concern about deflation risk. Well, it depends on how exactly you define it, but I would argue that if you go back to 2014, there was really a huge concern about inflation dropping across a large number of sectors, product categories, and with inflation expectations based on surveys also dropping. Admittedly, we were not in negative territory, but we were dropping and diverging more and more from the objective. So you see, there is some points I would say yes, agree, other points perhaps a bit more nuanced. Another thing which strikes is the emphasis on what exactly is the objective of the ECB. Is it below but closer to 2%, or is it more a bit of a wider range? So, yeah.
Do you agree with a statement, which is really quite strong, that this policy increases inequalities and inequalities here is intended between asset owners and non-asset owners?
Well, clearly, if any policy that is cutting interest rates means that for people who want to borrow money, it's getting cheaper. Now, typically, that is not coming to the detriment of asset owners, because these asset owners can have investments in instruments that gain in price, that appreciate in price when interest rates go down. Concretely speaking, if you own equities, typically they rise when the short-term interest rate goes down. If you own bonds, they would also go up in price when the short-term interest rate goes down. The issue of what it does to inequality is a very complex one, because it depends on how broad you want to conduct the analysis, and whether you look at it at households in the aggregate or individual households. If you look in the aggregate, then the consequence of very expansionary monetary policy, the consequence is favorable, is positive, if only because it is instrumental in generating a huge number of jobs. Mm-hmm. And that's really a key channel, 11 million in the Eurozone. If you look at individual households, yeah, it will be possible to find households that have suffered from that have actually lost out from this, and others that have gained. That is clear. If you're a household that has its financial wealth exclusively invested in bank deposits, well, the bank deposits are seen a decline in interest rates, your financial income goes down. This, by the way, has brought me already to cover these topics in our publications, and is to say, well, at some point will we see a pickup in the savings rate of households. Now, interestingly, in Japan is kind of almost the leading example of anything, because they have had the bubble many years ago in '89. They're aging faster and earlier than the rest of the world and so on. So in Japan, what you observe is that since 2004, there has indeed been an increase in the savings rate in conjunction with, of course, an increase in the participation rate of elderly people. Whether the increase in the savings rate is a consequence of the low interest rate policy, difficult to kind of document that in a kind of econometric way, but intuitively speaking, in my view, there is a relationship.
William, thank you very much for
You're
your
welcome.
time.